Forming stage and the transforming stage. So you may, as a group, have the luxury of starting at the beginning, where everybody's forming an identity, but you also may not. Your group may come together as a result of a storm. It may be something dramatic and tragic that happened that brought the group together. So it doesn't necessarily matter where your group comes together. The objective is that you come together. So in our first activity we did was the forming stage. We learned each other's names by just playing a simple game of name tag, you know. And I did modify because one thing I learned in working in a dynamic cultural mix that we are in Clarkston, for some, whereas we're used to just reaching out and taking hands, for some, that's not as comfortable. So you may just modify it where they point. And rather than the person having to tag the hand, they could point to them. For your kids, you'll find that's not as much an issue. They cross boundaries and norms and mores a lot easier. But being creative and making it work, you want to get to learn one another, their names, and introduce yourself. So that was our activity in the forming stage. The norming, and back a point or two about the forming stage. That's when everything is new, polite. You're trying to break the ice. Kids are a little nervous. They're getting to learn one another. Or your volunteers, maybe, if it's an organization that's not necessarily doing child-related work, just people coming together. It's a way to break some of that ice and get to know one another. Your norming stage, finding out what you have in common. We did, for that activity, what? Which one of those did we do in the norming stage? The rhythm runner. So being able to form an identity, see what we have in common. The rhythm person that set the rhythm, they represent in a group where you're starting to kind of get in sync. You're starting to find, oh, I like this, you like this. I didn't do like this or that, but this or that has the same kind of concept where you're finding out where do you have commonalities. And it was really neat to see how quickly a group can just start to fall in sync with something as simple as setting a rhythm, making it difficult for the person who just came in to find out where's their seam, where's the start and the finish. Everybody's kind of working well in together. Join the group over here. You look so isolated over there. All right. Then we moved into the storming stage, and we did the morph, right? So the morph is giving us the challenge of going beyond just the first two, but to really start to dig in and to get challenged. So the rock, paper, scissors, shoot. You were making progress. You went from being an egg to being a chicken. And then all of a sudden, you had to go back a step, and you're an egg again. It's like, man, I was making progress. You got to be a dinosaur, and you had to go back a step. But eventually, you got it, and you're a superhero. And then finally, the transforming stage, which we want all of our groups to get to, and that's when you're problem solving. You're putting things down. You're looking at them objectively. Okay, this is a challenge right now, transportation. And no, we didn't get the funding. We're expecting the funding, but we didn't get it, so we can't buy the bus. So did we cancel the program? Well, as you all came up with, maybe we get the parents to be chaperones to help the kids walk home in the evening instead of getting that bus to take them that we thought was going to be the solution. And then I love the way you all at the end there, and that wasn't a part of the script at all, but because you see how it came together so well, when I heard somebody mention the superhero, I was like, hey, that's a good point. If you're a superhero, you could fly. So now you have the ability to help your group flip those problems over even quicker because you've learned some things as a superhero. So this slide and handout will help you figure out, what am I going to do with my group? One of the questions that I wanted you also to start to grapple with, what stage is our group at now? What stage is our organization at? What stage am I at as a person who's in the community willing to either lead volunteers or volunteer myself? All right? So that is the first two, and we will move on to the after-school triad. So one of the things that we realize in working with young people is it's very important to have an environment that is conducive for them to grow. What you'll find in your handouts, and I also have an electronic copy available if you request, is that there are some people that have been along the road that we're all traveling. No need for us to reinvent the wheel. So Mike Ashcraft is a guy that I went to one of the after-school conferences beyond school hours and had the pleasure of watching and listening to for a seminar. And their whole organization is designed around helping after-school organizations thrive. And he has this concept of the ERE, keeping abreast of your environment, working on your relationships, and then keeping it fun. What's the other E for? Experiences. And novelty being a part of those experiences. So I asked you a question there to start to think about environments where you thrived. And one of our participators shared, could you share what you said when I said, okay, while y'all are here, jot some down. Where did you say? Right off the rip, just popped off your head.
Oh, when I said I just go to my Nana's house?
Yes. What made Nana's environment a thriving environment for you?
Because it was like, you know, we always talk about the neighborhood.
Okay.
My mom lived here. My Nana always lived here. Every time we went, so we always had that protection, that she make sure we were fed, we make sure she, you know, she just kept us grounded. We knew if she told mom on us, we always got Nana and the mama thing. So we was always good kids. I'm telling you, we was just straight. we were not terrified, but it was just that loving, you know, we knew something happened to us, she was going to have our back and take care of us. So I just love my Nana to death. She died when she was 78.
Anybody else have an environment where you thrived? That you can think of. It could be a working environment, a school environment. We got one from the family. If you have one that's a little slightly different from the family, it'd be good balance. If not, it's fine too.
I can think of a couple. I was really involved in 4-H.
Okay.
And I was really involved in church activities. And I think both, they made me feel like I mattered.
Okay.
Like actually, even though I was young, 12, 13, I had something to offer and people wanted to be there.
Okay. Very good. Very good. So the feeling that you mattered helped you thrive. The feeling of family and that bond that it represents helps you thrive. Anyone else? One more. Yes, I saw your hand first.
I can recall my early years in the work environment when I was just beginning my career. I was in my 20s. I was born and grew up in Alabama. And when I was 21, I moved to California. First time I'd ever been outside Alabama in my life. So I was in a work environment where the executives, my bosses, even my colleagues saw a potential in me that even I didn't see in myself. As I look back, almost every advancement that I made was someone coming to me saying, I think you can do this job. It's not something that I saw or that I sought after or applied for, but they saw the potential in me. And from that, I went back to school, got 3 college degrees. The job actually supported that. They paid my tuition through all 3. So I can honestly say that that was a job where I felt valued, and I actually think that they encouraged the potential in me because it's potential that I didn't see myself.
All right. So an environment where you were encouraged, not because you were already at a position of wealth or influence or power or stature, but they encouraged you and that helped you thrive because they saw what you could become. Awesome. So in those, go ahead, Marsha, I'm going to let you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was doing like this.
Call you
Marsha.
Sorry, say it again.
But anyway, I was like...
No, your name. I want to make sure.
Michelle.
Michelle.
Like Mr. Inball there. I was part of Junior Achievement in high school. And it was like, you know, you get a project, you come up with an idea for a product, you develop the product, you make the product, you sell the product, and it's like, ooh, I can be grown up and I'm only 15, or I'm 14, and I'm making money, and I'm doing this, and I'm not, you know, it's not that I had anything against flipping burgers, but I saw the potential of, you know, almost my definition of a corporate environment, or my definition of, ooh, I'm owning the company. And that junior achievement experience was fantastic.
Great, and that's a good balance out to all of the experience. So we had family, we had work, we had the faith group, and we had a school group. And these are places where we have an opportunity to experience a good environment. The relationships were mentioned in there, relationships that affirm you as a person, relationships that also offer you a sense of security and protection. And those are important whether you're a teacher, an instructor, whether you're a parent, whether you're a religious leader. The relationships are important. And then the last one was, where did I go for? Oh, I switched the slide. The experience. So we want to make sure that the experience doesn't become stale. You want to use some novelty there. So if we are dealing with a child who is throwing trash balls across the room, one of the most amazing things that I ever experienced was being in a middle school class where the math instructor was teaching the core subject matter, and he used trash balls as the incentive to get students engaged. So they would do a math problem, and whether they got it right or wrong determined they got 1 point, and then they would also get to make a shot, and the shots were around the room and they would get more points. So here these kids are throwing trash balls across the room, which normally teachers when I was growing up would not have any part of. You'd be going to the principal's office. Now they've turned, like we did with our carpet, the problem kids throwing paper across the room into an incentive to get kids involved in the math. And the experience is the novelty, whatever it takes, like some of the games that we did here, and having facilitated team building activities for as many years I've had from back when I was at the Outdoor Activity Center, 20 years. When I was getting ready for this, one of the things I found was exciting and challenging to have all this information that I want to squeeze into a little space of time. And the thing that I did was, it's like, you know what, I'm going to use some of these different activities. And to be honest, this is the first time I actually saw those activities, because I was going to pull out of my old bag of tricks. But keeping things novel, new, fresh, also helps our organizations grow and thrive. I heard a speaker at our church the other day say, if you go to a familiar well, an old well, get a fresh drink of water. You know, the water doesn't have to be old or stagnant because it's a familiar place that you work. So, all right, those are the ERE. What's the ERE? Environment, relationships, and experience. Let's go down. I see Kristen join our mix. Welcome, welcome.
Good morning, everyone.
This is our diversity fable. So there's a concept that I learned and I like and I've held on to ever since, that in America we initially started talking about our country as a melting pot. And then I started hearing that if you're a melting pot, you tend to lose some of yourself. Whereas if you're a stew pot, then you get to remain unique as well as offer the essence and the flavor and the diversity of who you are to the overall organization or the group. So as a cue to that, I'd like to show this diversity fable.
Hey, come set this up for me and I can talk a little bit more about it. Put it in the player. When if you request this, and I'll make it available to you, click on the hyperlink there, you're going to get just a segment, a commercial of the fable that I want to show you in its entirety. It is copyrighted material. This is a mentor of mine who has since passed on, but if you want the whole DVD, you can request that and it would be available for purchase. But for our purposes, I'm going to show the entire little segment. But if you click on the hyperlink there as you receive an electronic copy, it will give you at least enough of it to get the idea flowing. All right? And I did not try out this DVD player. I hope that it plays. If it doesn't, we'll use the little clip there. All right? And while it is loading up, can I get somebody to read that quote from Dr. King, one of my favorites? Anybody? Anybody? Yes. Thank you, Ethan.
Starting with everybody?
Yes.
Everybody can be great because anybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love.
And do me a favor, in your handout, put underneath love Dr. Martin Luther King. That is an error on my part. He's the person that quoted. I made the hyperlink so you can see pictures of a service project we did in Clarkston. But the way it looks there is like that's where the quote came from. So the quote is from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Yeah, it's not, the DVD's not playing? When you put it in, it just didn't play? All right, so never mind. Yeah, we'll just...
Why don't we have some new people that joined us?
Yes. If you would share your names with us, that'd be great. And I acknowledge Kristen because I know her, but I realize, yeah, you all may not know her.
Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Kristen Taylor. I'm the director for the Katie Morgan Community Development Center and also an affiliate of Clarkston First Baptist Church.
All right. All right. And Kristen, if you can join one of our tables, we got some space for you. And next. Okay. All right. And welcome, Mr. Jackson. I'm glad you connected with it. Yeah. Very good. All right. And we'll dive right in here.
In a small community, a giraffe designed and built a new and exquisite home, especially for his family's needs. It was a home ideally suited for giraffes, with high windows that ensured maximum light and good views, while protecting the family's privacy. It had magnificent soaring ceilings, tall, stately doorways, and elegant, narrow hallways that saved valuable space without compromising convenience. The home was so wonderful, it even won the National Giraffe Home of the Year award. The giraffe enjoyed the home and went as far as to move his prestigious woodworking business into the home's spacious basement. Of course, the giraffe was settled for nothing less than a state-of-the-art workshop. So remarkable and advanced was the equipment in this shop, and so skilled a craftsman was the giraffe, that the giraffe's business quickly became the talk of the woodworking industry.
Oh, he's the best. No, I taught him everything he knows about saying.
Unfortunately, the giraffe's growing popularity began to take its toll, and it became very difficult to keep up with mounting orders. Most days, it was all the giraffe could do to take a break or steal a breath of fresh air.
I'll never get all this work done on time. I could lose clients.
But it was during one brief break that the giraffe happened to notice another well-known craftsman strolling down the street.
I know that elephant. We worked together building a play area for the elementary school last year. He's smart, organized, and an excellent woodworker.
Okay, so that segment then concludes with the elephant coming over to work with the giraffe because they had done well on what event? The playground, which was a volunteer opportunity where they worked together, they enjoyed the experience. It was a rewarding experience. A little sidebar there. If you have an organization that has volunteers that are engaged, if you have a good volunteer service experience or engagement, they will come back. They'll tell other people about it. They'll want to do it more. So you want to encourage by all means necessary your volunteers, not just take the labor and say thank you and, so be it. You want to really think and be, what's the word I'm looking for? You want to be intentional about providing an experience that is as rewarding to your volunteers as it is to your organization being able to be successful by having those volunteers. So anyway, the elephant comes over, and what are some of the things, but I haven't seen the rest of the DVD, that you can guess happens as a result of the elephant coming over to the giraffe's house to work in his state-of-the-art woodworking shop? What do you think of the doors? He can't fit inside the doors. So Giraffe had doors that swung open double hinge because he had to get big equipment in. So he could initially get inside the door, and they got over that hurdle. What else do you think happened? The hallways are narrow. So he's going to get through one little passage and breaks the archway. He wants to be honest and tell the guy that something's happened, who, at this point, Giraffe had gone up the stairs to take a call. So he goes to go upstairs after Giraffe to tell him what happens on the first step. The stair breaks. So then he backs up, and the wall behind him, because as you said, the halls are narrow, now, boom, has a big old gash in it from where he's backed up. Giraffe comes downstairs and he says, "Heavens, Elephant, what happened? Are you okay?" And I love the way he says, "Are you okay?" The first thing he's concerned about is his comrade. But then after that, he's like, "What happened?" And he says, "Well, I was just trying to," I said, I can see exactly what happened. We just need to make you a little more limber, a little more stretchable. There's a ballet class that happens down the block that can help you be lighter on your feet. And then there's an aerobic class that can help you be a little more limber and a little more lean. So instantly, Giraffe goes into what makes sense for him, and that is to make Elephant a little more like Giraffe. And ultimately, Elephant says, I don't think that anything is going to really make a giraffe house available space or an appropriate or a good space for an elephant. And that's where the DVD ends. And it really sets up a great opportunity for us to converse around this whole issue of diversity. And the concept in many cases is, how do we get people to meld or melt into one? But really it should be, how do we allow people to remain distinct and the essence of who they are to flavor the entire stew. So one of the ways that I saw that happen, and I wanted to share with you all, was here in Clarkston when I did one of those garden.
In case you are wondering, because Roberta did mention that I work with positive growth, what you'll see and what you heard in the opening commercial clip there, Sustaining Urban Villages, that's the nonprofit that I founded. I founded it in 2002, post-September 11th, to take over this nature center in West End, Atlanta area. Fast forwarding ahead, I started to work with schools and schoolyard habitats, and this is one of the projects that we did across a couple of high schools and elementary school for Global Youth Service Day. And if I can make this bigger, I'm going to let this play for you to see. Slideshow. So while this slideshow is playing, I will give you a little dialogue, and hopefully I can turn off sunlight without making it pitch black. Well, you don't have to see me, you know what I look like. So these are slides of students that work both at Tucker High School and Clarkston High School. Indian Creek Elementary School is also in there. And what I liked was, as we did different projects, you found that there were things that you may not have initially identified or expected. I had a young woman come up and she said, "Oh, this reminds me of being at home, where we planted things, or where we fished, or where we engaged in the environment where I lived." And it wasn't restricted by what you knew or your language proficiency. And we had opportunities to bring groups of students together, particularly at Clarkston and at Indian Creek, to work on projects. It was like Dr. King's quote, you didn't have to have anything but a heart full of love and a willingness to serve. So this is some shots of these projects that we were able to do in the schoolyards, because each of the schoolyards, especially in Georgia, has wonderful green space, and to get people plugged into learning from doing. And that's where the concept of service learning comes in. And there are quite a few slides here, so I won't show all of them, but I wanted to at least get to a few of them. Another really interesting thing, too, talking about service learning, I learned that the black widow is very common here in Georgia. And you'll see in one of these slides this bug that one of the students was like, fearless, getting ready to pick up, and a little spidey sense in me said, maybe don't touch that one, let's use the shovel.
And sure enough, we used a shovel and picked it up, and it flipped over and had the red hourglass. If you get bit by a black widow, you have about an hour before it starts affecting some of your respiratory system, so you want to make sure that you get medical attention. And I'm going to fast forward us ahead here to our next slides. Oh, that's the spider there, the black widow. It's in the middle. It was a good size one. You see it there on the shovel. It's about the size of a large marble. And it was out there. But it was a good teachable moment. Okay, so here's the Clarkston habitat. And this was one of my favorite volunteer opportunities because they had such a wonderful green space in the middle of their school atrium. And initially they had planned to just bulldoze it over. But having worked in volunteer environments and seeing the beautiful diversity they had in the school, I said, if you give us a chance, I know that we can renovate this. And this was students, staff, and volunteers working together, and they turned this green space into something that's very wonderful for everyone to enjoy. We did this initially, 2013. It kind of started to go, 2012 things, started to go back in that state of it needed some attention, and now there's another volunteer group that has picked up the mantle and is getting students mobilized around this project. And I'm going to stop this one here. Go back to R. All right. So, our questions. How has diversity affected you? If I can get some feedback from the audience. So some of what we have brought to the table, anybody care to share your own diversity experience? Maybe you've been the elephant or the giraffe in the workshop built for one or the other, proverbially speaking. Anybody? Or your students, you've noticed.
I think diversity is a good stimulant. It keeps you stimulated. For me, it makes me want to learn something different and new. And then it helps me to learn something about myself.
Go ahead.
I would say I grew up in the Middle East, so I was American amongst, non-Americans.
Okay.
So for me, it's really been important for me to help my students fit in, to have that
Okay. Very good. Did everybody hear that? So I thought that was a very good insight that she mentioned growing up in the Middle East and having experience being the American in the environment where she was the one that was in the minority. Coming back has helped work with students that she realized would experience some of those same emotions. Did I get it right? All right.
I experienced yesterday that I'll share. I was at our Ready School, which is a program for 3 and 4-year-olds, and we had the Latino friends from Norcross came to share their experiences with the Somali and the Arabic group of the same program. We were talking about family engagement, how to get the parents involved, and the Latino group, we have fiestas and parties and dancing and music, and the Iraqi and the Somali women were shaking their heads and said, no, we don't dance, and we only do music with children, so we can't do that. And then they were talking about having sessions around alcoholism and other kinds of issues that the parents wanted, and the Iraqi woman shook her head and said, no, we don't drink. And so being really, sensitive to what kinds of things get offered for families, to listen to the families and see what would really resonate with them is really important to know the culture and what they're wrong with and what they need. So one size does not fit all.
I think I had this table with someone.
I was going to say something similar to yeah, because I'm actually a new immigrant here.
Okay.
So I'm from a Caribbean island, and I do identify with the kids that I work with because they are from
The world, right?
Yeah.
But no, you might have a
But
specific.
we have a similar climate, so when it gets to winter, they'll say, I'm like, yeah, I'm not a winter girl either, I do like my sunshine, coconut trees. So, I'm, on a similar page, definitely.
So, very good there. So we can see that in the room here, we ourselves in one form or another experience or work with others that experience diversity on some level. And how are you equipped to handle that diversity is a follow-up question. The best way to do that is to find tools that help you begin the discussion. Something as simple as the diversity fable there at least helps people that may or may not see, whereas certain times there is a structure that's set in place that is an impediment to a person that's not any fault of their own. The structure is what is the impediment. So that the two of them, Giraffe and Elephant, working on the playground on the volunteer project, they had wonderful camaraderie and ease of facilitation working together because the playground was a structure that allowed them both to move freely. But moving into more confined situation, the situation itself was an impediment. And to be able to start and to have those discussions, those of us that are volunteer leaders or the mature volunteers, that's something that us having knowledge and tools like this one we can use to help our organizations maybe move beyond an impasse that they would not otherwise be able to move beyond if they're constantly trying to, we can just get these kids to be more like giraffes that are like the elephants and vice versa, when we know the obvious is that if we see the environment for what it is, let's make it inclusive so that everyone can participate.
And that last question I'll leave for you to answer on your own, because in the interest of time, I want to move us to this next and important segment. And I will click us, the lights off one more time for you. One of my favorites. Okay. Back to my PowerPoint there. All right, so what have we observed in that little vignette? What are some of the things you... It's not me, me, me. Okay. Anybody?
There was a person who did it first.
There's a person who did it first?
Even if it wasn't something that ever been done before.
All right. And she was a little faltering initially. Looked like she might have failed at her attempt to be the first. And what happened? When they saw that she's doing something that hasn't been done before, she's trying to do something good, I'll pitch in. And it's been said that if you have put your effort and your strength and your ability or your energy into something, even if it's not something that you're going to be able to do on your own, if you at least attempt it, it's amazing that others seeing your zeal, your attempt, your effort are encouraged, in many cases inspired to try as well. I like the fact that this clip shows people from a diverse group, so they represent people from all over, but one of the common themes is that people from wherever you are from are some basic needs that they have in common, and the one they used here was the food. So that's why I share this slide as sharing the soup. And one of the key ingredients of what we share as volunteer service agencies is safety. So physical safety is important.
And that's why we're required to have things like the mandatory reporters training. That's why the Look Again initiative was established. And I'll tell you something about Look Again. That's the one where you have to have, if any of you have vehicles that transport kids, a second person sign on the sheet after the end of the last child getting off and the driver has actually seen the vehicle. They have to, in my case, the director, also sign off that I double checked it. And initially I was like, okay, this is just redundant paperwork for no reason. The day that I got the information about Look Again, I watched the video. I was touched. The hyperlinks here will allow you to go to the video and see it. And I was still thinking, as touching as that is, it's important to do. In our case, it's probably a little redundant, but I'll do it because I realized the kids have died because they were left in a vehicle. They had heat exhaustion. The very same day, my bus driver comes to me. He sees one of our kids. Her auntie is there, and he says, oh, okay, her aunt's here, and we're talking. And as he goes to get on the bus, he says to me, is child such and such going with? And before he could finish, I said, yes, she is. So he leaves, he takes the kids. We had short staff that day, and there was a volunteer worker there. And she came in after everybody was gone with the little child. I was like, why didn't you get on the bus? And she's a kindergarten, so she looks at me like, I don't know. And I called the bus driver and I said, Mr. Kent, you left the child here. And he said, no, I asked you if she was going with her aunt. And you said yes. And I said, no, you said, is she going with you? And I said yes. And I realized before he could say the aunt, I said yes, assuming he was asking, is she coming with me? And I thought about it. In this case, Bantu was fine because he came back and got her. But imagine now he asked me if she was going with the aunt, and I said, like I did, yes, before he could finish. And Bantu, while we were discussing it, gets on the bus, and she falls asleep. And he's not assuming that she's on the bus, so he brings the bus back, and he goes on about his business, and I go on and close up because I'm thinking this is redundant paperwork that's really not necessary, so I don't do the Look Again check. And then tragedy, we find out the little child B was actually in fact on the bus. So that's how it can happen. And our group is small. We have at that point maybe 7, 8 kids. I'm thinking because we don't have so many kids, this is really just tedium on redundancy for no purpose. But in that one instance, I saw how important some of these measures like Look Again, mandatory reporters training. So you're engaged enough with the child to know if there's some cues there letting you know there's some things going on at home. There may be some neglect or abuse going on. And that's so that we can do the work of supporting one another and supporting our families. We're all engaged and responsible for that. Those tools are available to help our organizations there, and as we share that information with the people that volunteer, work with, one of the things that is required is that you have a background check that's done by the federal background check agency that checks. And it costs a lot, but that's part of the reason it costs so much, because we want to protect our children. The thought behind that is that we are going to the extra extreme to protect our children, because the check itself is really just to back up what we are doing to be safe for our children. That brings us right up onto the lunch hour, so we are going to take our break. I meant to tell you all in the beginning that if you need to take a facilities break, it won't be an official break other than right now. The restrooms are down this hall through the double doors and on the right. As we conclude this first segment, and the next one will be very short, don't get scared, I want to share this quote with you, and if I can have another volunteer, one of my favorite number 2, Dr. King's quotes, if you could read that out loud for the group. Anybody?
Agape is more than friendship. Agape is not something affectional. Agape is understanding, creative, redemptive, goodwill for all men. It is an overflowing love which seeks nothing in return.
All right. And the question there, that is a rhetorical question for you to think as we move on in the next segment. How can this quote affect the work that we do? And that's a word I find I have picked up, and I share it in my writings and in my speaking. And I actually shared it before I found this quote to go with it. So as we transition for lunch here, our lunch will be a lunch and learn, so we're actually going to talk and engage. What we'd like to do is those partners who are here that have organizations, if you can bring your lunch and come up, and then the rest of us will engage them in just discussion about their organization, what they're doing, what opportunities they may have for others to engage in the work that they're doing. And the restrooms, as I mentioned, are through these doors, through the double doors down the hall and to the right, and then the lunch should be right outside these doors. And we will take about 5-10 minutes and then come back and start our lunch and learn, all right?
If you can.
I totally got really good comments.
I don't need a mic. I'm from CFAX, and we do an after-school program at Union Creek Elementary, where we consider the refugee kids, mostly from Burma and Thailand.
My name is Kristen Taylor. I am with Clarkston First Baptist Church. I can read conference right there. Great to see you guys. We do have an after-school care program, and the reason that I'm up here is because one, I'm representing for Clarkston First Baptist Church, but we actually just received a grant for a particular program called Play Out. And Play Out is going to be a fitness program where we have different students from the school state Clarkston come and actually engage in physical fitness, because a lot of our kids are not engaged in physical about the school day, so we want to bring it here to Clarkston. Thank you.
My name is Russ George, and I'm here with the Junior Youth Spiritual Empowerment Program. Ethan is also with me. And the Junior Youth Program is it's a program that was initially founded by members of the Baha'i faith, but it's I think one of the unique things is that it aims at trying to bring kids together from all different faiths and all different backgrounds, and try to figure out kind of what that common intersection in their lives are, so they can figure out how to support and engage with each other. You know, mankind all over the world kills each other in the name of religion. This is trying to figure out how we can, even if we don't agree about everything, how we can still collaborate and get to know each other. So, but for us, I think diversity is really our strength, and it's one of the programs. It's a global program. Here in Clarkston, it's really taken off because of the diversity. And we do stuff after school, and then of course a lot during breaks. So all summer, every day all summer, over vacations. So really those open spaces.
Hi, my name is Haley Collins, and I'm representing Cross-Getting Ministries. We reach out to the refugee community in Clarkston in a variety of different ways. But we actually just received a grant for our Monday Night Youth Program, which is where we provide a safe environment for our teenagers in the Clarkston area to come on Monday evenings and learn about people from different cultures other than their own, develop into leaders. We've had this program in effect for approximately 1 year, and the students that started at the beginning of our program have already developed into leaders in the Clarkston community. So it's really exciting to be able to see them grow and change, and to see that happen in other organizations as well.
My name is Josh Smith. I work with Friends of Refugees. I'm the Youth Programs Director for Friends, for short. Friends of Refugees as a whole has a mission to see refugees in Clarkston experience abundant life and the community that's flourishing. So the youth part of that is that we have a summer camp where it's the same children attend camp every day all summer for about 2 months, with different volunteer groups coming in, summer staff, and so we call them summer interns. They come in and invest time daily into those children, and part of that is academic support, 45 minutes of academic time every day at camp all summer. And we also have character education, recreation activities, music, arts and crafts, different things like that, and then free time just to have relationships. So I would say one of our biggest values of our MBA program is just relationship, and just encouraging to hear a lot of the team building stuff that we want the relationships to be empowering. So on a year-round basis, we also have some school groups that meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays in collaboration with Clarkston International Bible Church, and meeting in facility offices and in facility as well. So just thankful for partnerships, thankful to be here.
Hi, my name is Bethany Lanier, and I'm with New American Pathways. And our organization works with refugees and arrive at the airport to when they, become citizens and beyond 5 years. So they benefit for 5 years. But I work specifically with the youth department, and we run an after-school program and the summer camp for our students. And I supervise the after-school program at McClendon Elementary School. We also have a program at Jolly as well as one at Freedom Middle School. And we have a huge number of refugees from Burma and Bhutan that recently had a lot from Afghanistan and Iraq. And so that's interesting to see how the dynamics are changing as the demographics of the refugees are changing. That's what we do.
And I have a mic, so I'm going to put that one right there. And one of my other hats is, as I mentioned earlier, Positive Growth. And we are a three-faceted organization in that we have and originated with a group home cluster. It is a group home for boys. There are 3 houses that are right there on East Ponce that make up our group home cluster. On the street behind it, there's also another home that is part of our group home offerings. And then on North Indian Creek, next to the Clarkston Public Library, we have another 2 zone commercial homes that are our counseling center. It's the one with the fountain in the front, and then the education center, the building for our education programming, where I'm the director of education programs. And we've been in Clarkston for going close to 20 years, I'm sure now. I know it's over 15. And we work in the community providing after-school services, GED, and services in the counseling arena as well, and a group home. And something when you mentioned children coming together of all faces, when we would have lunch, I just was like, I'm so used to saying grace. So what I started doing with our kids is this little song, we are thankful, once again, we are very thankful, amen, amen. And we did it in the summer, so we had snack the other day, and one of the kids started the song. I said, yeah, we should do that every snack time too. So it's some basic concepts as we saw in the little snippet there with the international community around the soup. Most of us are thankful to have a meal, so that's something that we can share together in a little jingle that reminds us to be thankful for the meal that we share. So other than now that you've heard from just our organizations and a little bit about what we do in the community, the idea for each of us being here is that we would continue be inspired by the work that is done in our individual communities, but also to share with one another some best practices, i.e. just how do you bring together kids that may be Jewish, Muslim, Baha'i, non-sectarian around a meal to share something as common as being thankful. So that little catchy jingle that tends to be universal, thankfulness. Best practices, that's a part of what this time of sharing is, to things that you found that worked. I know being in our organization, we, for the after-school program, are meeting the needs of a majority of our students from one school, which is Robert Shaw. We do have students from Indian Creek, but Robert Shaw is one of these magnet schools that is very rigor intensive for students. And the students from the Ethiopian community predominantly, just by the way that they communicated with one another, found our program. It's smaller and it's focused on a smaller group of students a little more intensely, so they adopted us and we've welcomed them, and that was how we were able to plug in as a niche organization of after school among some programs that are much bigger and they're in the school and can meet the needs of students that are right there in the school. This is something that we found has worked for us.
How many students?
So in our organization, we have a capacity that we can, from the start, have of 23. And at this point, we're probably at half capacity. What I've done to be creative and to make sure that we're keeping at least minimum threshold of capacity is allowed our students from our middle school at the boys' home to come to the education center. I found that when I went to the group home, they weren't getting the same, because they get in later, and after school is finished, at least at the group home was finished shortly after 5, so they weren't getting that same intense hour that we were doing at our education building. So I brought them across to our building to help with that. But our max capacity is 23, and we are about half full at this point.
And so you are actually licensed.
Yes, we are licensed. We were exempt, and then we did in the last year, since I've been there 2 years, get our license. And what's the difference between the two? Not a whole lot. Just FYI. So you can be exempt and function just as good as a licensed organization.
So it's really
My opinion.
interesting. We don't have very many what we would call licensed after-school programs in Clarkston. A lot of our programs are free, and they're exempt. So I'd be curious. I know yours is free. You're going through licensing right now, if I remember.
We are licensed.
You just got licensed recently, right?
Like 3 months ago?
Yeah. So congratulations.
Yeah.
I know it's been a struggle, so we need to clap for that. And you're licensed, and you're free. Okay. License and free. You're free.
Free after school, some
After school. So not licensed.
No.
Okay.
I'm free as well, but not licensed.
Free but not licensed. Okay. Just to that get talked about a lot. So.
And I think it's probably as much as the other methods.
Okay.
You know, we do have a summer program that we do every year. And CFAC has different sites. We operate from 11 sites.
Wow.
So we have an after-school program running and the summer program. We also have the parents with just assimilating into the whole U.S. system.
Okay.
Housing, health, getting their citizenship, learning the English language.
Would you, the 11 sites, are they throughout Greater Atlanta? Or?
You said the cab, right?
Yeah.
It's mainly going to have the two in Woodland.
Yeah.
One high school by Gwinnett Mall and one off Jimmy Carter. They serve the Disney community more, and we have three main ones in Clarkston. At Marcus Park, at the Clark CCC Community Center, and AMP Elementary School. We'll have one in the mall. And there's 3 at the main side of CPAC, which is based on Beaufort and Shalford, which goes to the beginning.
Okay.
You know, a lot of the families, when they leave this area, they feel like there's a lot, I know, who move up to Gwinnett, and they feel lost.
If you're in dark and you see all green houses that come out, for the parents, it takes them to different activities or doctor's appointments to work. People both travel to each other and that's why I think that's
And just speak on how you're able to support the programs and charge
and get grants too.
That's basically grant.
Yeah.
Grant and chance. And then for what length of time?
What length of time?
Is it 5 years, 1 year by year, or?
It varies.
It varies.
But for our NEC one, it's the refugee impact. And that would we apply for every year. But the whole CPAC, it's all
That's why we have to buy kids who are here at the year.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
Yeah, all our 2 years in the country, 2 years now.
So that's another issue. A lot of the refugee programs because they get this grant, disabled families with only a video It's correct, with real needs, right? They don't have. So one of the things we talk a lot about is how do you find grants and how can we support after-school programs and writing more grants? Since Kristen's really good at that, right? Yes. You've written quite a few. How many you got? I'll answer that.
It's 4. We've gotten 2 for IDC enrichment program. We just recently received one from you guys. And there was another one that we received the name of it. But, excuse me, not only do we get support from grants, we also have sponsors and individual supporters that actually take money out of their own pockets and give back. Actually, if I could do a little blurb, Georgia Gives Day is coming up. And so what Georgia Gives Day is you can get to your favorite nonprofit organization. So what we do is we actually have we're having a 5-cause day. And one of those 5-cause days is actually for our after-school care program, for the ABC Youth Enrichment Program. And we take facts that we received from our ABC Youth Enrichment Program. We had a Jonathan's in 3rd grade, if I'm not mistaken, and he's reading on in 6th grade level. That's a huge accomplishment. So like Brennan said, evidence-based. So we take those facts and we put on our websites and we show what it is that Jonathan has come from to where he is now. And when they see that, they're like, okay, how can I continue to have this program within Clarkston and different areas in the Cape County as well?
So one of the ways to get grants is to have outcomes that we can measure and talk about in grant items, right? But to actually have real stories is a wonderful way. And I know Friends of Refugee does it real well, and y'all do it really well. Talk about individual kids. Ready? Georgia Gives.
I think
That's just theirs, right? Yeah, clicking on Ready is one of Georgia Gives. And if you go online and you just put Georgia Gives, you can see all the groups that are participating. And I know Friends of Refugee is.
Georgia Gives, absolutely. Yeah, we're having a big event over in Kirkwood. One of our board members, her and her husband, it's called Taproot Coffee. It's like a restaurant, coffee shop. And so we're having a big to-do, and Chick-fil-A is coming out to kind of help coordinate some of that.
It's part of Georgia Gives campaign.
It is, yeah. It's part of that work. Yeah. I would say another way, just funding. We had a cool experience last year. It has spurred more conversations this year among our youth, and I think the reason I put ownership there is because one of the things I'm really learning, I feel like I've just really slowly been like seeing how important this is. The kids themselves and the participants in our youth programs seeing the importance of them and being able to articulate how it's important to them. Not just that we as the adults who have all the plans and fill out the grants and think, man, I got to use this money now. But it just really has an impact, or the results have in kids' lives. And we did a celebration dinner last year, and the kids helped us to serve. So we had a lot of our stronger supporters, like similar to Taylor, that we have individuals that donate. We don't have, at this point, I'm not aware of any federal grants that we have. It's all individuals or corporations or other foundations. We had a celebration dinner with some of our important supporters, brought 7 or 8 friends with them, sponsored a table. We explained a little more about what we do, and the kids were basically the servers and helped cook the meal. And that has spurred one of our 9th graders now to, talk to me about, hey, we're going to do more fundraisers, because what ends up happening as part of our summer camp is that we try the best we can to pay at least some small stipend to our high school students who actually have come back as former participants, and now they're like campus assistant counselors. So we're trying to sort of empower young leaders and actually move toward paying them a fair wage. And you think about 25 high schools, there's a whole lot of money to pay that many people, but we try to at least give back to them as well financially from the money that they help to raise. So that's just one example. Another way of funding is sometimes when the community can take ownership.
I think it's important to touch back on not losing sight of the individuals, because a lot of times we we lump people into groups, the Syrian group and the Sudanese group. And the reality is, yes, there are those groups in Clarkston, but they're comprised of people and individuals, and we can't lose sight of those individual stories. My ministry is primarily funded by people who come in and they go, we see the value of what you're doing. And for instance, we had a campaign last year that completely funded our school of the arts for 1 year by people all over the world. They were not people who were living in Clarkston necessarily. They were, I think the furthest donation we got was from Seoul, South Korea. Okay? And the reason that they gave to this little organization in Clarkston, Georgia, was because they could see the value of what we were doing in the stories that we were sharing, of the students who are coming into our community and into our school and learning musical instruments. One of the ways that we try is through music and art and dance, providing a safe place for students to express themselves. And so you can't lose sight of who you're serving. You can't lose sight of the core of the trees. You've got to be able to focus in on the individuals that you're serving. That's very, very important.
How did they find out?
Well, we are a Christian faith-based organization. And so one of our aspects is that we promote multicultural worship. And so we travel all over the world. South Korea is one of them. And we gather songs from different cultures, but then we share them with other cultures. So we love to take music from South Korea and share it with the Sudanese church. And the Sudanese music, we like to share it with the people who are from Myanmar. And the whole point is to bring cultures together. And an understanding of, yes, I can't necessarily speak your language, and yes, there are aspects of your culture that are confusing, I don't get. But at the end of the day, you and I, we are both human. And we both have the same needs and the same desires for our families and for the people around us. And so that's how our support base is so large, because we're going all over the place to do that outreach. Oh, Proskyneo. I'll spell it because no one can ever understand it. It's Proskyneo. Proskyneo. It's Greek and it means to worship. So that's the essence of what we are. Yes.
Tell us where you're located. I think it's one group that a lot of people
We're
may not know about.
Yeah. Our office space is located at Clarkston International Bible Church on Church Street. So we're both actually just down the hall from
You're located where?
over at Clarkston International Bible Church, up on the 3rd floor.
And the name of the organization one more time, I'm sorry. So,
Proskyneo, it's Proskyneo.
Right at 12:59, doing amazing as well, staying right on track. So for the last 30 minutes, to follow up on the last few slides there, as you call it, if anybody needs to take a facilities break, you can dive back in and 60 seconds.
Or more food. We have plenty.
And feel free to continue your meal. You don't have to clear it out for this last segment.
Thank you.
Oops, sorry. Yes.
I'm so sorry. I have a quick question. I'm sorry. Will there be any type of follow-up of contact information
Yes.
for those that are here?
Yeah, it'll be on our website.
Okay.
Yep. ClarkstonAfterSchool.org. And you can also contact me directly.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you. Keep
How you
up the
doing?
good work.
Yeah, I'm doing super.
Kristen.
Yeah, and I'm Elizabeth. My pleasure.
Okay.
If I had known that you're using the same system, I would have told you could use the extend feature so you could switch between the things seamlessly. You don't see any difference. It's fine. Presentation is fine.
Yeah, extend.
Because yesterday when you used the other screen, you were extending and you could drag things. You can do the same thing, especially PowerPoint loves to do it. That's what happens when I put it there. It shows you the preview of the next slide, and then it shows them just the slide. So.
And I can do it with one computer? So you were gone, because I couldn't get it to play as a thing. It wouldn't show. It wouldn't show when I click my hyperlinks. I could see it on this screen, but it wouldn't show it on that screen. And we couldn't figure out. Yeah, it wouldn't work. That wouldn't work either. It wouldn't. So that's why I'm doing it this way. Yeah. And the turnouts. Yes, yeah.
I was like, wow.
Thank God.
So I don't know how to do some of these.
Yeah, so.
The superhero thing, was that the idea of the solution that you had in mind? Or?
No, not at all. That's why I said to them being novel and going with flow, but it worked. But no, if we were doing a full, we had the time already made to be completed before you leave, but wanted to make sure that it was in your hands sooner than later, just in case. Yeah, so that's what he's handing out now. We got a few more people coming back in, and we'll give them a minute or two to reconvene. The organizations that are here today, their contact information will be available on our website. And our website is clarkstonafterschool.org.
Is there anyone who got a grant that's not here today?
Yes. We had a total of 13, Roberta? 17, yes.
15 organizations and 17.
Yes, so 15, yes. And they'll be on our website as well. Yes. Give a.
I will say that the proposals were all really well done.
The ladies outside. You put it on the table. Okay. And what were you going to say?
Because it was short notice.
I was going to say something.
Oh, no. I kind of got it.
Okay.
It's not a lot of money, so we really appreciate it. The idea was to try to get give a plan.
Squares, the place to put the square.
Well, facilitating this.
Thank you, sir. We've got a couple ladies there coming back in, but actually you all are being efficient in filling out those evals, so that works too. You don't have to do it at the end.
Oh, we did have a request for member pumpkins.
Yes,
You made those.
I did.
You made those.
My green thumb. And this time of year, I grew up in Chicago where the winter was so Arctic. Yes, so you know, my wife graduated in 1994. The wind chill, the temperature was 20 below zero. The wind chill was 70 below zero. And I mean below zero, not 20 degrees, 20 below zero and wind chill 70 below zero. They still had the graduation. I said, only in Chicago. Only in Chicago. Cars wouldn't start. It was crazy. They delayed it, but they still had it. So here, one year I planted these guys. These are pansies in December. I was like, only in Atlanta can you plant something in December. And then we had like Snowmageddon and the ice and the snow. And when it melted, can you believe there was still not just a plant, there was a bloom on it. They love cold weather. So before we leave, those will be presented to some of our wonderful participants that are here. But anyway, let us finish up. Is that everybody? Got anybody? BJ, check the hall. All right. See if we can get everybody for this last little sip of stew that we have been sharing today. And before you leave today, please feel free to take some of what is left with you. It's not going, it'll be out there for you to take, so don't worry, it'll be there. All right, so as we look at wrapping up our time together here today, communication is also a key element of that stew. So we've talked some about the pot. Anybody remember in the first segment when we were talking about the pot, what was the stew pot? What did we give the designation as the stew pot? Right. We're keeping some of that autonomy, that individuality. We're not melting together, but we're a stew. And the pot itself, I have to review for my own self, was the ERE. What's the ERE? Environment, relationship, experience. So those are three key ingredients to establishing your program, making sure that you have a good environment, good relationships, safe environment, and good experience. Novice, out of the box. Conclusion today, I'll conclude in a way that I started to when I was substituting long-term at Clarkston and some of the schools in the area. And it was always amazing to me how much that was a lasting thought of my students. So I'll give you all that little treat at the end. But if I could get someone to give us, so we got the pot, we got some key ingredients. One talked about the safety, and then this is another key ingredient, communication. Someone could read that quote out loud.
Communication is like cooking. It takes patience, time, and measured amounts to get it right.
All right. And after gleaning from so many other great thinkers, I was able to pull one out myself. It's like, I better pin that and put it down for posterity. So communication, I've heard it said, is not so much what you say or what even the other person heard you say. It's what they think about what you said. Because I went to one of these trainings, and this guy, he had as many pumpkins as I have up here, was at 6. He had 6 different ways he said the exact same thing. And it was amazing through tonation, inflection in his voice, physical expression. They meant 6 different things. So imagine in our day and age where you're dealing with text and email and all these other ways of communication, if you can't necessarily see the person as they're saying it or hear the inflection in their voice, and then you have language that are different and you have dialects. So it's a lot of diversity that goes into this concept of communication. So I pulled out just a few, but this is adapted from a list of 17, and you can get that on our guy Mike's website. But the few that I pulled out there were to deal with this idea of before you open your mouth, wait. And why wait? Anybody? Hypothetically thinking.
Yes.
Say it again?
To think about what you're going to say.
Yes. To think about it. If you do have to communicate something negative, although I always think of something positive, but if you do, it's good even in communicating that to communicate it in a way that builds the R in the ERE. What's the R? The relationship, rather than setting a bonfire on it and trashing it. And you can do that. There are effective ways you can do that. One of the ways is to sandwich that constructive criticism in between the positive. We've been working together in this organization, 2 years now, and we've gotten some great things done to help our kids. Positive on the front. The constructive, or the critique. But I've noticed we have some challenges when it comes to acknowledging diversity in our group. Our students represent a diverse background, and there's a tendency to put one group over the other. And I know that we are really attempting here to help all of our kids. So can we think about ways that we're making sure that everybody feels validated? You're putting the constructive or the criticism part in there in terms that can be understood. And then you want to end that with the positive. I know we can work this through because we're doing the work of helping our kids. We started, we got a lot of good things going on here. The kids come here because they like it being here. They like what we offer them. And I just would like us to work together even more to make sure we continue to provide a great environment for them. So you got what you had to communicate, difficult, sandwich in between, positive on the front end, and an affirmation that this isn't a deal breaker. This is really an opportunity for us to grow closer together as we work through it. Get to know how the other person communicates. Very, very key, very, very important. So you have some people that communicate in writing. They type everything. We'd be sitting right across from each other, and they'll text you before they look up and speak to you. Then other people that they're very expressive when they're talking to you. Their hand is on you or near you, you know. So you have people that communicate in a myriad of different ways. It's important to find out the best communication of those who you want to get your message across to the most. And what we focus on mostly is getting our message across to who? Students, our children, the kids. So we want to, as much as possible, engage them in a way, a language, a form that they can hear it. So some of the activities that we did here were to give you some stimulating ideas about what ways can we communicate some of the same old principles to them where they'd be engaged and enthused. The wonderful thing about the out-of-school or after-school hours is we don't have some of those giraffe-like structures that keep us rigid and inside a box, confined to how we communicate those messages. Say it or stuff it. Now, this is more for the adults in our organizations as we work with each other. If it's bothering you, if it's bugging you, figure out a way to say it, communicate it, or stuff it and let it go. What we have to be careful not to do is passively, aggressively hold it back and then kind of let it seep out in different ways. Well, how come you gave 3 people sandwiches and I didn't get a sandwich? You know, just it's seeping out because you really want to say something, but instead you're just acting on it. Say it or stuff it, you know, and the stuff it part really is more or less saying to let it go. Not so much to stuff it, because that's when it starts to seep out in other ways, but to let it go. Confirm and clarity, listen reflectively. So when you have an opportunity to communicate something, as I mentioned in the beginning, it's not so much what you said, what they heard you say, it's what they thought about what you said. So to bring clarity, it's okay if you're communicating something to ask, okay, you got it? What's next? So that if you're communicating like I was to the bus driver, Bantu, student B is getting on the bus, going home, and he's communicating to me, student B is going with her aunt and going home, how could we have better communicated that? One, as the director, I realized, don't finish the sentence for anyone. Even if you think you already know for sure, and I am guilty of that. It's like, let me help facilitate this process and just say it, you know, before you finish it. No, no, no. And then on the back end for the bus driver or whomever communicating, if you've been cut off, to make sure, okay, are you saying yes to student going home with her aunt? Just want to make sure, then I could say, oh, no, she's going home with you. So making sure that you are communicating and thinking the same thing. We both heard what was said. The conversation was stopped at the conclusion of where we thought 2 different things, though. And then reflectively deals with listening in a way that, rather, most of us tend to, if we're not careful, think about what we're going to say next while the person is still speaking. The panel that sat up here today, thank God I know these people in their organizations I'm working with. Because honestly, my mind was in a zillion places and I didn't hear half of what was said. Maybe the most I heard was the one sitting close to me because I realized, uh-oh, I got to say something next. I better pay attention when she stops. You know, it's just human nature. So listening reflectively is giving real full vent to hearing what the person who's communicating is saying, so that you can be fully engaged in what they're trying to communicate with you. And finally, acknowledging and affirming emotions. I learned this principle actually as a part of a marriage too, but it works in the workplace as well, is being able to use I statements rather than projecting statements like, you know, every time I find that you're doing or you make me, whereas it would be appropriate to say, I'm feeling a little frustrated by what's going on in our organization, or I'm not comfortable with the way I see the interaction between students. It seems harsh. They don't seem to be as compassionate for each other. They seem to be willing to cut the spoon off of the other person before they can get a sip rather than extend the long-handled spoon to share. Dealing with the emotional part of it that we walk around with, that we have, that's a part of how we are interacting with one another, and using an I statement causes the other person hearing you not to be put on guard because you're saying you and projecting that statement on them rather than giving them a chance to respond to what you're saying that you're feeling at the moment. So, as I mentioned, and I put on this slide here, this is just a small clip, and I've added my own experiences to it to a larger list. Questions I'd like us to engage in our last few moments together. So give, if you will, a time when you were totally misunderstood. If I have any brave soul that would like to wade out in the waters to share. Communication time when you were totally misunderstood.
Mm-hmm. Even though we're not necessarily colleagues or peers, but not all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the children's program and parents program.
All right.
Did you understand the words that were coming up?
Right.
But that's got to be the longest running.
Mm-hmm.
Set of scenario.
And if go ahead, I'm sorry.
Just this morning. Just this morning when I was getting ready to come here, I was saying to my youngest son, I need this, and this done in the house, as in chores. He's having friends come over and he's saying, Mom, you know, I don't like when I have friends over and I have to do stuff. So I said, Chris, your friends are coming early. Normally you would have to have done your chores. Then you could have your friends over. So you can choose now. Because he was ready to blow up. Now, I'm leaving, his friends are coming now, literally while I'm driving out. And he's going to have to be doing his chores. So I said, Christian, stop for a minute. Still have to do your chores. They can choose to help you, or they can wait until after midday. The choice is yours.
That's good. Well, thanks for sharing.
Communication is the key.
I guess for me, one experience might be when, specifically when you're talking to some friends or you're trying to get a point across, but if from your perspective you try to just stay an observation, and then sometimes people might receive it as it being your opinion.
Okay.
Or you saying, this is what you felt, and all you're trying to say is make one point, but then sometimes people take it in and they attach their emotions to it, and they understand it to be some other meaning based on their own experiences, and it turns into a completely different message. And later on it leads into a really long conversation, so we can clear that up. But
Very good. So in the absence of communication, just being neutral, all of these other things were assumed and placed on.
without added communication and explanation, yeah.
Okay. Good deal.
Some emails are horrible ways to be misunderstood.
Yes.
Sometimes you write really quick, and it comes across to the other person not exactly the way you wanted it.
Mhm.
And I have a funny example. I went to an event which was actually quite good, and I had so many ideas. I listed about 8 ideas in an email, and I sent it off, and the person thought I didn't like the event. I thought it was horrible. And it was quite
Wow.
the opposite.
Opposite.
It was great, but it sparked all these other ideas.
Wow. Good. On the flip side of that coin, a time when someone really heard you, they heard your heart as you were communicating it. Can you give an example of a time when you really felt like they get it?
That would be for the 3 of us we work with.
Okay.
To work with each other every day. And it's almost stories. We have stories. It's like we came out of the same room And I think early on, when we first started working together, we decided that we would be accountable to each other.
Mhm.
So that helps. And it's almost like we know, what's on, we know, we just know. And it's because we're there for the same purpose, to see the children be the best they can be. And then we want to be the best that we can be. But it's our communication, whether it's spoken or not spoken, whether it's eye contact or whether it's just sitting at the table and doing like this.
Mhm.
It's like we understand each other. And so we are, I think we're true stupa, just from the three of us.
Okay.
We have to be. We have some peas and carrots in our pocket.
Nice.
But the funny thing is, we come in early, and it's the scary part too.
Mhm.
I'm leaving like in 2 weeks, and I'm just done. But anyway, we always come in we have to be at work like 1:30ish and something like that. So we get there like 1 o'clock, and we start talking about the day and the kids and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, I'm going to work early just to hang out with my colleagues. But it's awesome. I'm gonna miss it.
Cool, cool.
And I think our boss, for the most part, understands us too. And so, but she definitely understood me when I moved here. I said, this is what I like to do. And everything that I would like to do with the after-school program, maybe a couple of things I'm doing. And I didn't have to go and scratch on every rock to do it. She heard me. It was something that was needed to be implemented or was being implemented, and I would add to the enhancement of the.
Awesome. I will share. I was honored to have the opportunity to go to the after-school conference in D.C. that the collaborative sent some of us as steering committee members on. And while I was there, my ace, who's back there on the camera, a close friend of mine, helped me process this angst I was having. There's a gentleman who works with the White House faith-based initiative that my mother knows, and she was encouraging me to connect with him. And initially I was really excited about it, but I felt rebuffed because he didn't seem to respond to my initial emails and reaching out. So after some time experiencing that, I didn't want to be bothered with him. And so I explained to your mom, she's the one who really pushes all three of her kids to move beyond the barriers of our own mental limitations. And I just had this real attitude, and I was talking to my buddy back there about it, and he started helping me process emotions and how they're energy in motion. And the energy and motion that we have is important, that if it's toxic, if it's in a negative sense, then we will continue down that line. Whereas we can turn it around, it's up to us to use that energy in a way that would be more productive. And I thought about when I first heard about this guy, I was so inspired by what he was tackling as a person in our very politically correct society, dealing with something that is so quintessential to many of our lives, dealing with the faith community. And I used to just really purpose, just for the agape quote, just for his sake, reach out and let him know that, I'm praying for him, concerned about him, thinking about him. And at some point I had stopped that. So at this juncture, when I needed to either press ahead to really try to meet him or to say, yeah, I'll let it go, I changed that energy around. And to Roberta's point, it was amazing once I finally met him. He was totally the opposite person of what I thought. Here I'm thinking, he's a pompous, high on himself, a person who's probably going to give me 5 curt minutes and then I'll say to Mom, I told you, Totally the opposite. One of the most humble persons I've ever met, and just a really nice guy. And I was like, wow, I was thankful that I had an opportunity to process that emotion with someone to help refocus my mind and energy in a more positive way, so that when I met him, first of all, then I didn't come with all of these presuppositions. Because by the time I got a chance to meet him, I'd already concluded, regardless of how he responds, he's in a position that is very stressful. And I'm going to be a solution of, I don't need or want necessarily anything from you other than to just support the work that you're doing. I want to see that work continue. So that was one of those times when I was heard, and the heart of what I was communicating was heard, and it really helped in the long run to move forward in a better light. And finally, how do you get your point across when it's really important, and how do others receive it?
Stamp my feet.
All right. Stamp your feet. Some people shoot off one of those emails that we were just talking about. It's like, this is going to solve it. But from the group, give me some feedback. When it's really important, how to communicate and how do people receive it?
I think it's very important that whatever you're doing is something that you're passionate about, because that comes across when you're communicating with people. If you're just doing something for the sake of, I don't know, fulfilling a quota or something, that's going to come across when you talk to other people. But if you're passionate about whatever you're involved in, people are going to respond to that. That's always been my experience.
Okay.
I think it's important to keep it positive, but at the same time have this like brave communication that needs to happen sometimes. You know, if there is an issue, don't ignore the issue, but actually address it. And I felt like one thing that helps is to just ask someone at the end, like, what did you hear me say?
Yes.
And make sure that what you're trying to get across got across. Make sure they know that they're valued. At the same time, here's something that needs to be addressed.
And to your point, what did you hear me say? That might sound a little trite or come across, you know, a little pretentious, but you can let the person, because I just want to be sure. Sometimes I know I can think I'm communicating the right message. So if you can just let me know what you're hearing me say. So it can be done and communicated. I know a lot of times when I'm like really want to get my point across, I can use a lot of words, and I've had people that love me enough to tell me, I don't know what you're talking about, or you're using some really big words, and I'm not trying to, but it's just like all of this stuff in my head, and it's just coming out. So the feedback that I get from them helps me remember, okay, think about where you're going to say wait first, then cut about this much of what you're going to say down to a quarter, and then communicate it, if it's really, really important. And if you're going to write it, because I write it even more profusely than I can speak at times. If you're going to write it, keep it simple, because it will get lost in the sauce. So keep it short. Yes,
Mine is
Elizabeth.
very similar to yours. But the very first thing I want to know is this a good time?
Good.
For you for us to actually
Good.
dialogue.
Good.
Let's preference that, because if it's not a good time in their minds, then whatever I say, really
Good. That's golden, Miss Elizabeth, definitely. Because you could be saying the right thing, just at the total wrong time. So to ask, to check in.
Which is, I think it's a little funny compared to the other advice that's being given, is that sometimes you're not the person that should say it.
Okay. Good.
Maybe you know that there's someone else around you that would say it better, and they would receive that person better.
Okay.
Sometimes that's the better solution.
Good, good. And definitely in working in and with children, let's say it's a parent who may have information that is difficult to communicate, then there in many organizations is a protocol who should communicate what. So